Hey there. Uh, so we hit 10,000 subscribers. Let's clap it up. First things first. Let's just clap it up. You know what I'm saying? Give yourself a little pat on the back, man. We did it, man. We made it to 10,000 subscribers, and there's more to come. Now, what you're about to see is our normal, typical reaction, but I am looking for new video ideas. You know what I'm saying? Hit me online. Y'all want to see more gameplays? Y'all want to see what y'all want to see? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm gonna keep doing my reactions. That's always gonna keep going. And if you want to see me live do my reactions, I'll do it on Twitch. And I put my Twitch in the bio of every single video, probably this video too. And so if you want to catch me live, that's where I'm gonna be. And let's keep striving, shall we? Hope you enjoy the show. Why inventing color TV was so difficult. Let's get into it.
The cameras you see before you are color cameras. They are now transmitting a black and white picture. By pressing this button, which I now do, the cameras are transmitting a live color picture.
And it's really crazy how much of a difference that shit made, because back with my grandpa, before he passed, like, it's actually crazy how much of a difference it makes. Because, like, there's some TV outlets that still post and redistribute like a lot of black and white color films and TV shows, and some of them are pretty entertaining. Like Twilight, I watched that. Like some stuff like that, Gunsmoke, I had to watch with my grandpa. Like I actually enjoyed some of it when I was a little kid. It was actually pretty good TV.
This was it. This was the moment the U.S. officially changed from black and white to color TV, becoming the first country to do so. Over the next 30 years, every country in the world made their switch to color TV. And this is how the French did it.
That boring ass intro. What the fuck? No intro, no nothing, just a straight color switch.
Et voici la couleur.
Hey, what? Hey, there's no way, bruh.
There was indeed color.
He aquí la televisión en color.
These events were a huge deal, but in reality, color TV had already been invented almost 30 years before this. So why did it take so long to get it? Although it seems basic now, going from black and white to color was an enormous challenge. We animated the entire thing to show you the incredible engineering of early mechanical TVs, the insane 19th century electronics that made color possible, and the mind-boggling methods of transmitting color.
What? What do you need? I have to go somewhere. She's going.
If you break down and write, that's on you. It's not.
Data.
Had a little interruption, y'all. Let's get into it.
In order to understand how we got color TV, we need to go back to the invention of TV itself. The idea was clear. Capture moving images, transmit them over large distances, and display them at the other end. It didn't exist yet, but it was obvious that something like that would be cool. Then, in 1925, Scottish inventor John Logie Baird came up with this, the first ever television. The subject would sit in front of a spinning disc, which had 30 holes equally spaced in a spiral pattern. As it spun, the holes would scan across a window, capturing the entire frame in a series of 30 vertical lines. As each hole passed the
Yo, that's how TVs worked? Or whatever film worked?
window, it allowed light into the machine, where it was focused onto a
Yo, that's trippy. How the fuck? How's that shit work, dude?
photoelectric cell. This was made from thallium.
Now listen, we learn something every day. Now we learn something every day, man. Every time I stream, I'm learning something, dude. This is something new to me, man.
A material that generated electricity based on its exposure to light. The more light that it received, the more electricity it would generate. As the holes scanned the subject, the photoelectric cell would measure the changes in brightness and turn that into an electrical signal. This was then transmitted using either radio waves or a telephone cable to the display. From there, the process would basically happen in reverse. First, the signal was amplified and sent to a light bulb, which was placed behind an identical spinning disc. As the disc spun, the electrical signal would vary the brightness of the light, which would fall onto a glass screen at the front of the machine. Although this was simply a dot of light, it painted
Yo, that makes sense. The way that they depicted that, okay, makes sense. Okay.
the entire frame
So that shit is basically moving and the same motion, but just moving to the right and flashing before the shit so fast that it can display an image.
so quickly that the
Okay.
human
I
eye
told y'all we learn something every single day.
would blur it into a single image. It wasn't perfect. 30 lines produced a pretty poor resolution, and with only 5 frames per second, the playback was choppy. But Baird's idea of the television was now a reality. His next challenge was figuring out how to introduce color into his TV.
What's good, Kiro?
This is Alex. Alex is a producer who just got invited to work with a big artist tonight.
He modified his spinning disc by splitting the holes up into 3 different groups and adding red, green, and blue filters to each section.
Pretty good.
As the disc spun, it would scan the entire frame one color at a time, recording the light levels of each specific color. On the receiver end,
So they basically just doing the same shit. They just added color to it. Not much different.
this process would be reversed. The incoming signal for the red light would control the bulb just as the red holes passed by. Then the green signal would control the green holes, and the same for the blue holes. This would quickly display red, green, and blue frames sequentially, each with slightly different light values. Because the human brain holds on to
So that bitch basically like a Beyblade. It's like Pegasus and El Drago, you know what I'm saying? So like the regular version is no color, but reverse spinning is El Drago with color. I get that shit though. I get that shit.
images for a split second, the colored frames would blend together perfectly to form a complete color image. Baird demonstrated his color TV at an event in 1928, placing different colored flowers and a basket of strawberries in front of the recorder. Although the screen was only 2 inches wide, the people at the event were stunned by the vibrance they were seeing, and once again, Baird had been the first person to make it happen. But sadly, his mechanical system was extremely limited. The resolution was just 15 lines wide, and it still only had a frame rate of 5 frames per second.
Yo, that shit is shitty. That's shitty, bro. Imagine playing Fortnite at 5 frames per second. You're not even gonna be able to hit a double at it. Like that's terrible work, bro. I couldn't imagine playing the game at 5 frames per second. And probably back then, that's probably good for them, bro. That's the crazy thing.
With this system, he'd need a much larger wheel spinning at crazy RPMs to produce a sharp and smooth image. Baird continued on with his mechanical.
Like that's already crazy in itself. He has to have to display an image. You gotta have something moving with an RPM. That alone is already different from our society now.
system, but elsewhere, inventors from around the world were about to crack the code for a new kind of TV, electric TV. 60 years before this, German physicists Heinrich Geissler and Julius Plücke were experimenting with gas and electricity. They placed 2 pieces of metal inside a glass tube, sucked most of the air out to create a vacuum, and applied electricity to the metal. To their surprise, the whole tube started to glow. The more air they sucked out, the more the light got focused onto a point at the end of the tube. Plücke then placed a magnet next to the tube and realized that it caused the light to move. As it turned out, the electricity was causing electrons to shoot out from the cathode, and as they collided with the end of the tube, they released energy in the form of light. Another German, Ferdinand Braun, took this concept and made the first ever cathode ray tube. This was an electron gun with 2 magnets that could precisely deflect the beam vertically and horizontally, steering the light onto a small screen at the end of the tube.
So basically, theoretically, we can make lasers, dude. That's not too far off from a laser that can just like a split something in half, like Homelander shit. That's not too different, bro. Yo.
By the late 1920s, multiple inventors from all over the world were trying to make a TV using cathode ray tubes.
I swear I've heard that term before somewhere in school, bro. Cathode ray tubes. I've heard cathode before.
But one inventor managed to crack the code first. His name was Juan Odoo. Just kidding. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that gives entrepreneurs access to...
Yeah, I thought he was talking about something, bro. I respect the hustle, though. You know what I'm saying?
TV that could produce clear and smooth images, inventors from around the world started looking into cathode ray tubes. In the same way that mechanical TVs painted lines across the screen, a cathode ray tube could do the same, but without any moving parts. The deflectors inside the CRT could bend the electron beam to form precise lines across the screen,
the images,
varying its brightness along the line based on the electrical signal and
Yo, that makes sense, bro. That seems way more like efficient than just some shit turning really fast to display an image. Okay.
forming a clear image. In 1927, Japanese inventor Takaya Nagi showed that this was possible and came up with a CRT-powered display with 100 lines of resolution. It was an impressive achievement, but his TV still relied on a mechanical disc to capture the light and produce the colored signals. The real challenge was figuring out how to actually record light using a CRT. Several years went by, but in 1933, Russian-American inventor Vladimir Zworykin finally came out with this, the iconoscope, which was essentially
Yo, I'm hearing a bunch of fucking words that I've never heard before. Like, bro, what is an iconoscope, dude? What is that? That shit looks like it looks like a magnifying glass, but with attached to a jar. Like, what is that?
the world's first video camera. Here's how it worked. Light from the subject entered a lens which focused it onto a thin mica sheet inside the system. The back of the sheet was covered in a thin film of silver, and the front was covered in tiny photosensitive grains, like thousands of tiny pixels. As light from the subject hit the grains, they would emit electrons and lose their charge. The more light that hit the grains, the more electrons would be released. This would effectively save an inverted snapshot of the image on the sheet, with dark areas retaining their charge and lighter areas losing it. An electron gun inside the tube would then scan the sheet one line at a time, just like a CRT. When it hit areas that still had their charge, the electron beam would bounce back.
Yo, is that why I used to have one of those old types of TVs, bro? And every time I would touch it, that shit would low-key sting me a little piece. It was like the old ass TVs. Is that why? Because that shit got like a little bit of electrons? Is that why that shit stung me a little piece?
And hit a detector, which turned the reading into an electrical signal. This signal could then be transmitted, inverted, and turned back into an image using the CRT in the television. By the mid-30s, it was clear that CRTs were the future of television. But once again, the question was, how do we add color? American company RCA developed a special color video camera that took the incoming light and filtered it through special prisms to separate the red, green, and blue. Each color was then directed onto separate iconoscope-style cameras, which would generate a signal for each color. At the television end, those signals would be fed into 3 separate CRTs, and the images would be recombined back onto a single screen using a series of lenses. This sort of worked, but
That shit looks ass. But that shit looks fucking garbage, dude. It's like they're hosting like an outlined body of themselves. Like they're just in their host body. Like it's like their soul is detaching from their host body. That's what it looks like.
aligning the images was difficult, and having 3 CRTs essentially made the TV 3 times more expensive. On top of that, sending 3 separate color
See, now it sounds good in hindsight, but that shit looks ass.
signals instead of a black and white signal made it completely incompatible with existing black and white TVs. By this point, the number of black and white TVs across the US had risen from just 10,000 to over 5 million in just a few years. And asking all of these people to suddenly upgrade to a more expensive color TV wasn't going to go down well. There needed to be a color TV that was cheap and could work with existing black and white TVs.
30 years of innovation has led to this, the all-electric eSprinter.
Color. It's here, the color TV you've been waiting for.
RCA's idea
That prehistoric ass fucking commercial, dude. Oh, I feel like they talk. Yeah, I was about to say something stupid, but like the way that they talk, even back then, was just so much more different. They talked like they were talking in tongue, dude. Like it was English, but like it was like old folk English. Like it was long ago, but it wasn't that long ago, bro. It's crazy.
was to have a single CRT made from 3 electron guns that scanned the screen together. The screen itself was carefully coated with red, green, and blue phosphors, arranged in triangular patterns so that when they were hit by electrons, they would light up depending on how strong the beam was. With this, they could precisely control the color values for each cell, and when viewed from far away, the colors would blend together to produce a real color image. It was a good idea, in theory, but the electron guns at the time just weren't focused enough to hit such small targets. That's when they came up with this simple but genius solution. Just behind the screen, they added a metal plate called a shadow mask. This had thousands of tiny holes behind each set of phosphors. Because the electron guns were slightly spaced apart, the beams would pass through the holes at slightly different angles, causing them to only hit the correct phosphor. Even if the beams weren't so accurate, the holes in the shadow mask would make sure that they could only hit those very precise parts of the screen. As the beams moved across the scan line, they would paint this triad of colors onto the screen, with varying levels of red, green, and blue depending on the signal. This happened so fast that the human eye saw it as a perfect color image. This was the breakthrough that TV needed, and it became the standard broadcasting system across the US.
So basically the light is being emitted through those small ass little screen holes. Now, when you look at it from afar, your eyes are getting tricked into thinking it's one singular image. That makes sense.
But there was still one huge problem. By this point, a large amount of radio frequencies had already been assigned to things like aviation, ships, military communication, and radio. Allowing TV channels to use any of these would interfere with all of these important things. 12 channels were assigned their own space on the radio spectrum, and the FCC decided that a single channel had to fit into a bandwidth of 6 megahertz. This was easy for black and white channels, but color channels would need 3 times as much bandwidth. The trick was to hide the color information in between the black and white signal without using any more bandwidth.
Yo, these people were smart as fuck back then because they had to come up with all this shit with no prior knowledge, no nothing, dude. Like, they had to get this shit out the mud brick by brick. Like, bro, it's 10 times harder to come up with some shit yourself and pioneer it than to add on to some shit and revolutionize it. Actually, I don't know. I could beg to differ that they're equally as hard, but like, not to diss anybody who's revolutionized something. That's great too. But to build something brick by brick with no prior knowledge of it, nothing, that's truly amazing.
Before the signal was transmitted, the red, green, and blue signals were combined to create an overall brightness signal called luma. This was essentially the same kind of signal that a black and white TV would use. Then, separately, the color signals were added and subtracted with predefined formulas to make 2 separate signals called I and Q. I essentially covered the orange and blue hues, while Q covered the green to purple hues. If we look at a basic I sine wave, the signal moves.
See, now I've seen hue a couple times. Bro. A couple times. When I'm editing my shit, when I go on, like, I'm editing the filters, I see hue near saturation. I never knew what it was, but I seen hue.
Back and forth between these hues, and the overall amplitude determines the saturation. These 2 signals were phased 90 degrees apart and combined to create the chrominance signal. This signal was modulated onto the luma signal at a frequency of 3.57 megahertz. For black and white TVs, this frequency would be filtered out, and the basic luma signal would be used. But for color TVs, the luma signal would be filtered out, leaving behind only the chrominance signal. From here, all of the individual color signals could be decoded. Before the start of each line, there would be a short burst of a generic 3.57 sine wave. The TV would lock onto this and use this as a reference by comparing the
Yo, he's speaking in fucking tongue to me, bro. Like, I've literally attended engineering classes, and bro, it sounds like he's speaking tongue. I'm not gonna lie.
chrominance wave to the sine wave, and figuring out the difference, the I signal could be decoded. Then, by shifting the chrominance wave by 90 degrees and comparing the difference once again, the Q signal could be decoded. Since I and Q values were made using known formulas, the math would essentially be reversed to figure out the individual red, green, and blue signals. Those were then sent to each electron gun in the TV, and the lines were drawn onto the screen. This genius encoding method meant that all of the color information could be squeezed into the same bandwidth of a black and white signal, and that same signal could also be read by existing black and white TVs. It became the
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. That makes a little bit more sense. Okay. At the end, I started to understand a little bit just, but I'm not even gonna lie. I couldn't understand what the fuck he was saying until the end.
broadcasting standard across America, a standard which lasted for over 60 years until analog finally gave way to digital in the 2000s. Despite this, the number of color TV households took a while to catch up, only overtaking black and white in the early 70s. It may seem like old and simple tech now, but the engineering and creativity that went into inventing it was astonishing. Thanks for watching.
Definitely, bro. Definitely. Wonderful video. Wonderful video.